In the great palace of Zinthar, where the stars could be seen through windows as wide as the sky, lived Princess Ilara. Her beauty was unmatched in her world. Her skin shimmered like polished pearl, and her long silver hair flowed down her back, like a river of moonlight. Her eyes, deep and violet, sparkled like the stars above. But despite her beauty, there was an emptiness inside her heart, a loneliness that nothing could fill. Ilara was not like the other princesses of her kind. She had been born with a rare condition. It made her unable to bear children. It was something she kept hidden from the world, but it was a truth she could never escape. The palace, her kingdom, and her people all placed great importance on heirs. Every royal family was expected to have children to continue the bloodline, to pass down the crown, the power, and the legacy. But not Ilara. No matter how many suitors came to the court, none were interested in her for anything beyond her title. They looked at her as a means to an end, someone who could give them a claim to the throne. And when they learned that she could not give them children, they quickly lost interest. In the halls of the palace, whispers followed her wherever she went. The princess cannot have children. The words cut deep, but they were true. Ilara tried to be strong. She wore a crown of jewels, walked with grace, and spoke with the calm authority expected of a royal. But every day it felt like her heart grew heavier. She sat through endless meetings, listened to advisors tell her what she must do for the good of the kingdom. Yet, despite her position, she was still a prisoner of her own life, a life that seemed so empty compared to the bright future she had once dreamed of. Her father, King Althar, was a wise ruler, but even he could not hide his disappointment. He wanted grandchildren. He wanted a bloodline that could continue to lead the kingdom. But no matter how much he loved his daughter, the reality of the situation never escaped him. One evening, the grand hall was filled with guests from across the galaxy. Lords and ladies from faraway planets had come to Zinthar to celebrate a new trade agreement. As always, Ilara stood by her father's side, offering polite smiles and nodding at those who spoke to her. But there was no warmth in her eyes. She had learned long ago that no one saw her for who she truly was. They only saw her title. It was then that she saw him. Elias. He wasn't like the others. While the other guests were draped in fine clothes made of fabrics from the furthest corners of the galaxy, Elias wore simple clothes, a brown tunic and black trousers. His hair was short and dark, and his eyes, a warm shade of brown, looked at her not with admiration but with kindness. He was human, one of the many diplomats sent by Earth to discuss the trade agreements. And unlike the others, who seemed so caught up in the splendor of the palace, Elias was simply observing the world around him, as if he didn't quite belong there. Their eyes met across the room, and for a brief moment, the noise of the crowd seemed to disappear. Ilara felt something stir within her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Curiosity. The evening went on, but Elias remained in her thoughts. She had spoken with countless diplomats in her life, but none had ever made her feel so seen. She had heard humans were different from other species, but she had never imagined how true that could be until she met him. After the event, she found herself in the quiet gardens of the palace, her favorite place to think. The stars above were a constant reminder of her loneliness. The vastness of the sky made her feel both small and isolated, and she could only wonder if there was anyone who would ever truly understand her. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Elias standing there, a soft smile on his face. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, princess," he said, his voice warm and gentle. Ilara blinked, surprised to see him. "Not at all, Mr. Elias. What brings you here?" "I was just thinking. This is a beautiful place," he said, gesturing to the moonlit garden around them. "And I wanted to speak with you, if that's all right." She hesitated, but then nodded. "Of course. What would you like to talk about?" He smiled. "I suppose we could start with how out of place I feel here." He chuckled, looking around at the grand palace. "It's all a little overwhelming, for someone like me." Ilara found herself smiling. "You're not the only one who feels that way," she said. This place can be overwhelming. They stood in silence for a moment, the soft hum of the night air filling the space between them. Elara could feel the weight of her own loneliness, a feeling she had carried for so long, but somehow, Elias's presence made it feel a little lighter. "I'm not sure if I should ask you this, Princess," Elias said suddenly, his tone serious. "But I've noticed something in your eyes. Something sad." Elara's heart skipped a beat. She looked away, unsure of how to respond. No one had ever dared to notice that sadness before. They were all too busy with their own agendas to see the woman beneath the crown. Elias seemed to sense her discomfort and quickly added, "I didn't mean to overstep. I just wanted you to know that I see you. For who you are, not for your title." Her breath caught in her throat. It was the first time anyone had said something like that to her. The first time she felt like someone truly understood her, beyond the crown and the expectations placed upon her. She turned to face him, her voice soft. "You're the first person who has ever said that to me. Most people only see the princess, the heir to the throne. But you see me." Elias smiled, gently. "Of course I do. I'm not here for your bloodline or your crown, Princess. I'm here because I think you're someone worth getting to know." Elara's heart fluttered in her chest. She had never allowed herself to hope for something like this, not after all the pain she had been through. But Elias's words were different. They were genuine, unspoken, but full of meaning. He wasn't there to claim her as a prize, to win her favor for his own benefit. He was just there. "I'm not what they want me to be," Elara whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Elias stepped closer, his presence warm and steady. "No one is really, and that's okay." For the first time in years, Elara felt the weight of the crown on her head lighten. In Elias's eyes, she wasn't just a princess, she was a person. She wasn't broken, nor was she defined by her inability to have children. She was simply herself. "I think," she said softly, "I'd like to know more about you, Elias." His smile widened. "I'd like that too, Princess." And in that moment, Elara realized that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her yet. Not in the way the kingdom expected, but in a way that was entirely her own. And for the first time, she didn't feel quite so alone. The days that followed felt different. Elara had never before spoken so openly with anyone. Elias was unlike any person she had met. His kindness was simple yet profound. He didn't care about her royal title, her ability to bear children, or her family's expectations. He saw her as a person, a woman with dreams, struggles, and fears, just like anyone else. It was a strange feeling, but a welcome one. Every day after their first conversation in the gardens, they found small ways to meet. Elias would visit the palace on official matters, of course, but those meetings always seemed to stretch longer than necessary. They'd speak about many things: his travels across the stars, the human way of life, the simple joys of family life. Each conversation felt more natural than the last. There were no masks, no pretenses, just two people sharing their thoughts. One afternoon, Elara found herself waiting for Elias in one of the palace courtyards. She had been pacing nervously, wondering what he would think of her invitation. She had asked him to meet her in the garden again, this time away from the public eyes. It felt like a quiet rebellion, choosing to spend time with someone who, for once, didn't expect anything from her. When Elias arrived, his face lit up with a gentle smile. "I hope I'm not late," he said, his voice as warm as ever. "No, not at all," Elara replied, her voice filled with a mixture of nerves and excitement. "I was just thinking." "About what?" Elias asked, stepping closer. Elara hesitated. She had never been one to reveal her inner thoughts so freely, but there was something about Elias that made it feel easier. She looked down at the flowers beneath her feet, then back at him. "About how different you are from everyone else, how easy it is to talk to you." Elias smiled, but there was something deeper in his eyes, something that made Ilara feel understood in a way she hadn't felt before. "Well, I'm glad it's easy," he said. "I've always believed that talking should be natural, not forced." Ilara nodded, a weight lifting from her chest. "I wish more people saw me like you do," she said, almost in a whisper. "I'm always expected to be something I'm not. I'm always expected to carry a legacy I don't know if I can live up to." Elias tilted his head, his expression soft. "You don't have to live up to anyone's expectations but your own," he said, "and I think you're doing just fine." For a moment, there was silence between them, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It felt peaceful, like two souls, simply existing in the same space without needing anything more. "I'm glad we met," Ilara said finally. "I don't think anyone else would understand me like you do." Elias stepped closer, his gaze steady. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone, Ilara. Sometimes we just need someone who's willing to listen, and I'm here for you, whenever you need to talk." Her heart fluttered at his words, a warmth spreading through her chest. No one had ever said something so simple yet. Weeks passed since Ilara and Elias had shared their first deep conversation. The garden had become their secret meeting place, where time seemed to stand still. Every visit was a reminder of how much their connection had grown, yet it also stirred something deep inside Ilara. She found herself feeling something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have the life she had always dreamed of. A life full of love, acceptance, and understanding. However, the reality of her position as a princess couldn't be ignored. The weight of her royal duties always hung over her, no matter how much she longed for a simpler life. There were whispers in the palace about her relationship with Elias, and they weren't always kind. The nobles who frequented the palace were quick to judge. Their eyes filled with disapproval whenever they saw Ilara with the human diplomat. She knew it was only a matter of time before her father would call her in for a conversation about her future. One evening, just after another day of meetings and royal duties, Ilara was summoned to her father's chambers. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she walked down the long hallways of the palace. King Althar, her father, was a man of great wisdom and power, but he was also a man bound by tradition. He had always expected her to marry a noble suitor, someone who could help strengthen the kingdom's alliances, someone who could carry on the royal bloodline. The idea that she had developed a bond with Elias, someone from a faraway planet, someone who was not part of her world, was something he could not easily accept. Ilara took a deep breath before entering her father's study. He was sitting at his desk reviewing documents as he always did in the evening, but when he saw her, his stern expression softened. "Ilara, come in," King Althar said, his voice calm but serious. "We need to talk." She nodded and approached, sitting across from him at the large polished table. There was a long silence between them, and Ilara could feel the weight of the conversation about to unfold. "I've been hearing rumors," her father began, his voice measured. "Rumors about you and Elias, about how you've been spending more time with him than with anyone else." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She had known this conversation was coming, but hearing it out loud made it feel real. She opened her mouth to speak, but her father held up a hand. "I'm not here to scold you, Ilara," King Althar continued, his tone softer now. "But as your father and as your king, I have a duty to ensure that the future of this kingdom is secure. You are the heir to the throne. You must marry someone who will help strengthen our alliances, someone who can bear children and carry on our legacy." Ilara felt a wave of frustration rise inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had been hearing these same words for years, and they always made her feel like she was not enough. She wasn't enough because she couldn't give her father what he wanted, an heir. "I know, father," Ilara said, her voice steady. "I understand my responsibilities. But I've learned something over the past few weeks. I've learned that there is more to life than just duty. There is love, connection, and understanding. Elias makes me feel seen. He sees me for who I am, not just as a princess or a future queen. He makes me feel like I matter." Her father's expression remained neutral, but Alara could see the concern in his eyes. "I understand that, Alara. I know you care for him, but you must understand that this relationship is not practical. He is human. He cannot rule here. He cannot lead our people. You cannot marry him and still fulfill your duties as the heir to the throne." Alara's chest tightened at his words. She had known that her father would never accept Elias as her partner, but hearing him say it so plainly hurt in a way she hadn't expected. "I don't want to abandon my duties, Father," she said softly. "But I also don't want to live a life of loneliness, doing what is expected of me, without ever having the chance to live for myself." King Althar leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped in front of him. He studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "You're right. You deserve a life of your own, Alara. But the kingdom needs you, and that is something that cannot be ignored." Ilara's mind raced. She wanted to tell her father that she didn't care about tradition, that she didn't care about the bloodline. But the truth was, the kingdom did need her. She was the heir, the future leader. And if she chose Elias, she would be stepping away from everything she had been raised to do. "I know what you're asking of me, Father," Ilara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't ignore my heart. Elias has shown me that there's more to life than duty and expectations. I don't want to spend my life wondering what might have been." The king looked at her with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I know you've always been strong, Ilara, and I know you will make the right decision. But remember, the path you choose will change everything. It will affect not just you, but the entire kingdom." Ilara stood up from the table, her mind filled with conflicting thoughts. She knew her father loved her and wanted the best for her, but she also knew that his vision of what was best didn't align with what she wanted. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to follow the path that had been laid out for her. She wanted to create her own future, one where she could choose happiness over duty. As she left her father's chambers, Ilara's thoughts turned to Elias. He was the one who had shown her that there was more to life than the crown, more to life than expectations. He had shown her a kind of love she had never known, a love that didn't ask for anything in return. He loved her for who she was, not for what she could give him. The decision was no longer about what her father expected or what the kingdom needed. It was about what she wanted. She wanted to be with Elias, to create a life with him, even if it meant stepping away from the throne. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to make a choice that was her own. That evening, she met Elias in the garden. He was waiting for her, as he always did. When he saw her approach, he smiled warmly, but Ilara could see the concern in his eyes. "Ilara, is everything all right?" Elias asked, stepping closer. She nodded, but her heart felt heavy. She had just left a conversation with her father that had changed everything. "I had a talk with my father," she said, her voice soft. "He's made it clear that the future of the kingdom depends on who I marry. He doesn't believe I can be with you." Elias frowned, his brow furrowing in concern. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to cause any trouble." Ilara shook her head, taking his hands in hers. "No, Elias. This is my decision, and I'm not blaming you. I don't know what to do anymore." Elias took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers. "Ilara, no matter what your father says, you don't have to choose between duty and love. You can have both. You can make your own path. I'll be with you, no matter what." Her heart swelled with emotion at his words. For the first time, Ilara felt like someone truly understood her, someone who saw her as more than just a princess or a ruler. He saw her as a person, someone capable of making her own choices. And in that moment, she made her decision. She would choose love. Ilara made her decision. It was not an easy one, but she knew it was the right one for her. The weight of the kingdom's expectations, the pressure of her royal duties, and the fear of disappointing her father, they all paled in comparison to the truth that had been growing inside her for weeks. She could no longer ignore what she truly wanted. She wanted Elias. She wanted the chance to live a life of love, of understanding, of companionship. And she wanted to build that life with him, no matter what the future held. The decision to be with Elias was not one that came lightly. She knew it would change everything. The kingdom, her family, the people who had followed her for years, they would all question her choice. They would wonder why she had chosen love over duty, why she had rejected the crown for the sake of a human man. But Elara no longer cared about their judgments. She cared about her own happiness. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she could finally make her own choice. As she walked through the palace halls, the reality of her decision began to settle in. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Elias, too. He had shown her kindness when no one else had. He had listened to her, truly listened, without expecting anything in return. He made her feel seen. He made her feel understood. And, for the first time, she didn't feel alone in the world. Elara had known for a long time that she could never be the queen everyone expected her to be. She couldn't be the perfect heir, the one who followed tradition and upheld the kingdom's laws without question. Her heart was not in that life. It was with Elias, and for the first time she was willing to fight for that love. That evening, after another long day of royal duties, Elara met Elias in the same garden where they had shared their first real conversation. The stars above them were as bright as ever, and the soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. It felt like a world away from the palace, from the weight of her responsibilities, from the judgment of those who would never understand her choice. When Elias saw her, his face lit up with a smile. He always seemed to have that effect on her. His presence brought a sense of calm, of peace that she hadn't felt in years. "Elara, I've been waiting for you," he said, stepping forward to meet her. "How are you feeling?" She smiled softly. There was a peace in her. The days following Elara's announcement to the court were filled with tension. She had expected resistance, but nothing could have prepared her for the storm of reactions that followed. The royal court, usually a place of formality and politeness, had erupted into whispers and heated discussions. The news that Elara, the future queen, had chosen a human, someone from a faraway planet, someone with no royal blood, had shaken the very foundation of the kingdom's expectations. Some of the nobles were supportive, nodding in understanding at Elara's desire to follow her heart. Others, however, saw this union as a threat to the kingdom's stability. They had spent their entire lives working to secure alliances, to strengthen the royal bloodline, and they couldn't fathom how Elara could throw all of that away for someone who didn't share their values, their traditions, their blood. King Althar, her father, had been silent for most of the days that followed Elara's announcement. Elara knew he was struggling with his emotions. As much as he loved her, he had been raised with a deep belief in the importance of tradition. To see his daughter, the heir to the throne, make a choice that defied centuries of royal protocol was something he could not easily accept. One evening, Elara was summoned to her father's chambers again. She had known this moment was coming. After everything she had said in the court, there was no turning back. She had made her choice, but now she had to face the consequences of that choice. When she entered her father's chambers, King Althar was seated by the fire, his face as solemn as ever. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. There was no anger in his eyes, but there was sadness. A deep, quiet sadness that made Elara's heart ache. "Elara," her father said softly, his voice heavy, with the weight of unspoken words. "I know you've made your decision, and I know you've chosen love, but the kingdom needs more than that. We need stability. We need alliances. We need a future, and a future built on tradition." Elara sat down across from him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what was coming. Her father would tell her that she could not be with Elias, that she had to give up her personal happiness for the good of the kingdom. It was the same argument he had made time and time again. But this time, Elara would not back down. "Father," she began, her voice steady, "I understand your concerns. I know the kingdom needs stability. But what about the people of Zinthar? Don't they deserve a queen who is not afraid to choose her own path? Don't they deserve a ruler who follows her heart, rather than someone who is trapped by expectations? King, Althar sighed deeply, his hands clasped together. Ilara, you are not just any ruler. You are the heir to the throne. You are the future of this kingdom. What you do now will affect everything. The nobles will question your ability to lead. The people will wonder if you are fit to rule. Ilara stood, walking over to the window and looking out at the stars. The same stars that had watched over her for her entire life. The same stars that now seemed to mock her with their cold, distant light. I don't want to be a ruler who is afraid to follow her heart, Father. I want to build a future where love and duty aren't two separate things, where they can coexist. Her father looked at her with a mixture of pride and worry. I want that for you too, Ilara. But I'm not sure you understand the consequences of your actions. If you marry Elias, it will change everything. There will be those who will rebel against you, who will see this as a betrayal of everything our kingdom has worked for. Ilara turned to face him, her eyes filled with determination. I've made my choice, Father. I will not marry for duty alone. I will marry for love. Elias has shown me what it means to live for something other than duty. I won't turn away from that just because it's difficult. The king looked at her in silence, his gaze searching her face, then, slowly, he nodded. I've always known you were strong, Ilara, and I've always been proud of you. But I also know how difficult this will be. For you, for Elias, for the kingdom. Ilara felt a pang of guilt. She knew her decision had not only affected her, but also Elias. He had stood by her through everything, but he had never asked her to make a choice between him and her family. He had always accepted her, no matter what. I know, Ilara said, softly. I can't live in a world where I'm forced to choose between duty and happiness. I've seen what that does to people, and I don't want to be like that. The silence between them stretched on, but this time it felt different. Ilara could feel the shift in the air. Her father had not agreed with her decision, but he had not condemned her either. There was a sense of understanding, however small, that had begun to form. We will have to see what happens next, King Althar said, his voice quiet. The court will not be easy to convince. The people will not accept this decision easily. But know this, Ilara. Whatever happens, I will support you. As your father, I will support you. Ilara smiled softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Father. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, her father called out to her. Ilara, he said, his voice filled with a rare tenderness. Be careful. There will be those who will try to take advantage of this situation. Be strong, and be true to yourself. Ilara nodded, her heart heavy but determined. She was ready for whatever lay ahead. She had made her choice, and she would stand by it, no matter what. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. Ilara and Elias continued to meet in secret, discussing their future and what would come next. They both knew that their decision to be together was not one that would be easily accepted by the rest of the kingdom. But they also knew that they could not turn back. One afternoon, Ilara received a summons from the royal court. The nobles had called for a meeting to discuss the future of the kingdom, and they wanted her to be there. Ilara knew this meeting would be unlike any other she had attended. It would be a meeting that would decide the future of her reign, and perhaps the future of her relationship with Elias. When Ilara arrived at the royal court, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The nobles were seated in their usual places, but their eyes were cold and filled with judgment. Ilara took her seat at the head of the table, her heart racing in her chest. The time has come, one of the elders began, to discuss the future of the kingdom. We must decide who will lead us, and we must decide what kind of ruler we will have. Ilara, you have made your choice. Now it is time for the kingdom to decide if it will accept that choice. Ilara felt a cold chill run down her spine. She had known this moment would come, but now that it was here, she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. We will not allow a human to sit on our throne, another noble declared, his voice harsh. The princess has dishonored us all by choosing a man who is not worthy of her. Elara took a deep breath, standing tall as she addressed the court. I've made my choice, she said, her voice unwavering. And I will not apologize for... Elias is the man I love, and I choose him above all else. If that means losing my throne, then so be it. But I will not live a life of regret. The room was silent. The nobles exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of what to say. Elara could feel the tension in the air, but she stood firm. She had made her choice, and she would not back down. After what felt like an eternity, one of the older nobles spoke up. Elara, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. You have shown courage today. You have chosen love over duty, and while that may be difficult for us to understand, we cannot deny your strength. We may not agree with your choice, but we will respect it. The room fell silent once again. Elara could feel the eyes of the court upon her, but she held her head high. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The weeks that followed the royal court's tense meeting were filled with uncertainty. The kingdom was divided. Some saw Elara's decision to choose Elias as a bold act of love, a sign that the future of Zinthar could be shaped by more than just bloodlines and alliances. Others saw it as a betrayal, a challenge to the very foundation of their traditions. Elara knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she had made her choice, and she would not go back. Elias, ever supportive, had been by her side through it all. His quiet strength, his unspoken belief in her, had been her anchor. She no longer felt the weight of the world pressing down on her alone. Together they were a team, and while the kingdom continued to react to her decision, Elara felt something growing within her that she had not allowed herself to feel before. Peace. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the palace grounds, Elara and Elias sat together in the garden. It had become their sanctuary, the place where they could speak freely, away from the eyes of the court. The soft rustling of the leaves in the breeze, the distant chirping of birds. It was peaceful here. For the first time in a long time, Elara felt like she could finally breathe. You know, Elias began, breaking the comfortable silence. It's strange. I always thought I was just a visitor in this world, passing through. But now it feels like I'm becoming part of it, part of you, part of this place. Elara smiled softly, turning to look at him. You're not just a visitor, Elias. You're a part of my life, my future. And this place, it's your home now, too. His eyes softened and he took her hand in his, the warmth of his touch sending a wave of comfort through her. I never imagined that I would